I still remember the exact moments of when I was 9, 11, and 15 years old sitting in the theater watching the Raimi Spider-Man movies for the first time. Movies that I think about every day that shaped me into the person I am now. It sounds hyperbolic, but they're a core part of my DNA. Ever since the release of Spider-Man No Way Home, I often put myself back into that theater seat 15, 18, 21 years ago, watching these movies for the first time. Or hell, any of the countless times I've watched them at home on DVD with friends and family. And the idea of Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man, a character that was seemingly left in the past, breaking through the multiverse and entering a world where magic, cosmic beings, and even something as simple as other superheroes exists, sounds like an impossibility. Yet here we are, almost 2 years since the release of Spider-Man No Way Home, one of the biggest movies of all time, and I think I speak for a lot of people when I say one of the most surreal experiences in entertainment history. I was in pure euphoria for weeks after watching No Way Home, and it instantly became one of my favorite comic book movies ever. But it's very easy to get caught in the tornado of excitement that rampages through fandoms when the latest big comic book movie event just hits. Now that some time has passed and the dust has settled, I want to revisit Spider-Man No Way Home after the hype, as well as recount the journey that led us to the incredible multiverse event of a lifetime. Post-Avengers Endgame, I anticipated entering an era of the MCU that would feel like a bit of a lull. We had just reached the peak. The battle against the Mad Titan that was teased all those years ago was won. We bid farewell to characters that were pillars of this universe. It felt like a proper and well-earned conclusion. So, the first question that popped into my head was, where do we go from here? Do we immediately start setting up the next big threat? Do we focus on smaller, more personal stories that don't necessarily put the fate of the universe at stake? What was next for Spider-Man? Despite already showing up in 4 separate movies, this version of the character was still very much in his infancy, and like the tip of the iceberg was barely even scratched. There were still a ton of villains to pull from his rogues gallery, and character arcs to explore for numerous sequels. Marking the end of Phase 3 was Spider-Man Far From Home, a film that honestly didn't do a whole lot for me. I don't want to dive into an analysis of this movie and explain why I don't like it. Plenty of other people have done that at this point. Instead, I want to highlight this moment that's pertinent to the topic of discussion.
There are multiple realities, Peter. This is Earth, Dimension 616. I'm from Earth 833.
I'm sorry, you're saying there's a multiverse?
This turned out to be total bullshit on Mysterio's part, but was actually a massive hint of things to come. The multiverse? Nah, that's not something you do in live action. It's crazy, too ambitious. Plus, if they did do it, it would probably be an underwhelming, diluted version of the concept. Across the Spider-Verse, it's already doing it. And yeah, crazy ideas like that are more realistically pulled off in animation, so they got it. Huh. They cast J.K. Simmons as J. Jonah Jameson again. Could they be hinting at... Nah, J.K. Simmons was so good as J. Jonah Jameson in the Raimi movies. Why not bring him back? It's just fan service. The state that Spider-Man was left in at the end of Far From Home was a shocking one. Peter's secret identity was known all around the world, and that's all we had to go off for a while. This story concept alone warrants an entire movie based around it. Spider-Man's secret identity being exposed to the world is a constant looming fear that few stories have dared to fully dive into. It has been done before in comic books and it had dire consequences for the character. It's a huge undertaking to go after such a massive narrative that changes the status quo of the character. Whatever route you decide to take, whether it be to commit to the change of having Peter Parker be a superhero without a secret identity, or come to a resolution that is satisfying and keeps the character safe and back to his roots, the audience can't feel like they were cheated and like it was all for nothing. Unfortunately, the latter was the reality for this kind of story in the pages of One More Day. Getting another shot at a Peter Parker's identity exposed story was exciting and perhaps an opportunity to stick the landing a little better. One of the bigger theorized plots for the third untitled Spider-Man movie was one of Peter Parker on the run from the authorities after being framed for the murder of Mysterio. Peter would need a good lawyer for such serious allegations, and the one that came to mind was very obvious. This could be an easy in for Charlie Cox to finally be solidified as Matt Murdock in the MCU, and have the next movie center around the team-up between Spider-Man and Daredevil. Vincent D'Onofrio was quick to express his interest at taking a jab at Spider-Man, which only added fuel to this DD and Spidey rumor. A persistent report was that Kraven the Hunter would be the antagonist. Kraven is a classic Spider-Man villain who will soon be making his big screen debut with one of those Sony solo movies, but we've yet to see him face off against Spider-Man. Kraven, knowing Spider-Man's secret identity, would up the ante on this big hunt against the Spider, and knowing how ferocious the big game hunter can be, this would certainly make for a tense movie. Tom Hardy's Venom had been hanging around for a while with a big empty logoless chest that could be filled by our 8-legged friend. The man behind the symbiote himself had been pushing for an opportunity to fight Tom Holland's Spider-Man, and I think he still is even today. So a potential third movie could be a face-off against Spider-Man and Venom. But this rumor didn't have much flame to back it up, because the flame would hurt it, because it's a symbiote. And fire would... Things started getting interesting with rumblings of Jamie Foxx returning as Electro, with multiple reports of the actor being in final talks to join the third movie, and some mishaps by Foxx himself talking about his return in social media platforms. This one had some legitimacy behind it. Foxx had already played the villain in The Amazing Spider-Man 2 to underwhelming results. So I saw this as a second chance for Jamie Foxx to play a totally different version of Max Dillon that's more compelling and isn't a freaking embarrassment. Just a month later, Alfred Molina was rumored to make a return as Otto Octavius. Alright, Jamie Foxx I can buy. His version of Electro was one of the weaker aspects of TASM 2, so sure, let's give him another shot to play a better version of the character. But Alfred Molina coming back? His Doc Ock in Spider-Man 2 is phenomenal. There's no need to bring him back. This is all baloney. You know what? That Jamie Foxx rumor is probably false too. We'll probably get confirmation of who's playing Kraven any day now, because there were also reports of Marvel looking for a Joel Kinnaman type actor for the next Spider-Man movie. I can see him playing Kraven. Oh shit. Zendaya accidentally confirms that she's been working with Alfred Molina. Jamie Foxx coming back, as well as Alfred Molina. You can't do the multiverse. It'll never work. With WandaVision being the first major stride towards what was to come by bringing back Evan Peters as, albeit a Fox Studios Quicksilver fakeout, and then the Loki show straight up centering around the multiverse and unleashing it in its final episode, it was clear the direction that the next Spider-Man movie was heading in. The multiverse saga is here. Over the months, we only got more and more hard evidence of prior Spider-Man universes colliding with the MCU. Alfred Molina talked about being de-aged for the next movie, film crew t-shirts showing Andrew Garfield's Spider-Man, and major screenshot leaks. All was confirmed with the release of the first trailer for Spider-Man No Way Home. There are a couple of MCU movies that omit the usual fanfare during the opening logo card to sort of set the tone, and Spider-Man No Way Home is a perfect example of this. During the Marvel Studios logo, we hear a news report recapping the ending of Far From Home, with ominous drums lightly playing in the background. It's a very scary and tense opening that feels real. The gravity of what just happened comes crashing down on Peter, and having MJ in the middle of the New York City crowd as they connect her to Spider-Man, and her not being at an immediate arm's reach from Peter, is panic-inducing. You can see the potential of a Spider-Man movie that leans into this tone, like the one that was rumored at one point. A movie that has Peter on the run from police, the government, general threats that have it out for the webhead. It would be very different from the two previous Spider-Man movies that kept things on the more lighthearted side for the most part. No Way Home quickly moves away from this tone with a sequence that has a breakneck pace and eases the tension with some comedic beats. I would have liked to dwell in this moment a little longer. You can still see the panic in Peter's eyes and body language, but the plot thread of Peter's identity being exposed to the world, I think deserves some time for the character and the audience to feel just how much of a big deal this is, and stew in what this could mean for Peter and everyone involved in his life. But any sense of danger is relieved by a montage that skips ahead a few days, and while the public expresses their outrage against Peter, I never got the feeling that something scary was right around the corner as a result of what just happened. Even the scene where Peter and his loved ones get apprehended by the Department of Damage Control is mostly played for laughs.
I would like to have my words stricken from the record.
Oh hey, there's a rumor confirmed and checked off the list. Matt Murdock's presence is another major element that could have played into a Spider-Man on the run type of movie. While his cameo is really exciting, it is pretty shallow. He doesn't really do a whole lot, he just kinda says, don't worry about Peter, the charges won't stick. Instead, his cameo here serves the purpose of Marvel stating, yes, Charlie Cox is here, he is acknowledged officially as the MCU's one and only Daredevil. One of the major plot threads of the first act that gives us another montage that moves the timeline further on is Peter, MJ, and Ned applying for college. Apart from them being apprehended and exposed to the public as friends of Spider-Man, this is the first major consequence of Peter's identity being revealed that affects his friends. They are denied from MIT due to the recent controversy. I think this is a great motivator for Peter to stand up and take action against the ramifications of his identity being revealed. It's classic Peter Parker stuff. His loved ones suffering because of the things that splinter off of his life as a superhero. I keep latching onto the idea that I wish this movie was scarier, dramatic, and had a more tense tone. Like unspeakable consequences happening after Peter's identity gets revealed to the world. But I think that's just my mind going to the only touchstone I have for this kind of story. And that's the Civil War story arc from the comics where Aunt May gets shot after Peter's identity is revealed to the world. But No Way Home is not trying to tell that story. That's a completely alternate movie. No Way Home is concerned with something more grandiose, and that's to continue to pave the path that leads to the multiverse saga. Earlier I was ragging on Matt Murdock's cameo being kinda superficial and not really contributing a whole lot to the story here, but here we have Doctor Strange, who is a major character in this movie. He kicks off a huge plot beat that is the catalyst for the remainder of the movie, and I think it's cool that other superheroes can just be here, without this being an ensemble thing like an Avengers movie. Whether that be a minor cameo appearance or a major part that almost makes them a co-star, with their involvement being significant enough that it will have ripple effects that naturally lead to their own movie that's soon to come out. This is nothing new, we've been getting this since Thor Ragnarok, but I think it's just awesome that we've reached this level in comic book movies. They're becoming more and more like comic books and animated shows. Doctor Strange being so quick to agree to performing a spell that could potentially wreck reality is kinda hard for me to buy, especially after he and the Avengers won a battle against very small odds. And Strange just kinda going, I feel bad for the kid. I don't know if that's enough for me. Maybe a scene where we see Strange dwelling on the idea and perhaps thinking of the impending dangers that can come from the public knowing Peter's identity. That could have been a push that led him to accept and say, okay, this is worth the risk. But in the movie, it just feels like he's doing Peter a solid because they've worked together. Peter jumping to the mystic arts without even calling the college to have them reconsider, it works for me. It's funny. Because honestly, I didn't know that was a thing you could do either. So we're finally here. The thing we've all been waiting for. Well, one of the things. Doctor Strange's spell was messed up due to Peter tampering with it while Strange was casting it. Instead of people forgetting who Spider-Man is, people from other universes that know Spider-Man's secret identity got pulled into this universe. It works for the most part, except maybe Electro. I've heard it to be justified by fans theorizing that Electro was able to figure out who Spider-Man was after hearing Gwen call Peter's name during their fight. Max Dillon, being this Spider-Man obsessed fan, would obviously know that someone named Peter takes pictures of Spider-Man for the Bugle, so he was able to connect the dots when he heard that name. I don't think that was the intention at the time. Like, I don't know that this scene is conveying that Electro found out Peter's identity after, hearing Gwen say Peter. I think they just kind of got lucky that if you frame it that way, then it works. Either way, seeing these actors come back after decades to step back into the shoes of these iconic villains is unreal. And what makes it really exciting is seeing the dynamic of the characterization of these bad guys and the modern MCU sensibilities play off each other. I was worried that they would MCUify them by having them make witty jokes every other sentence, but Octavius is authentic to the character he was in Raimi's Spider-Man 2. He's often the butt of a joke, and his reaction to those moments still feel like something his version of the character would say. When we got reports of these actors coming back to play these villains, I thought that they weren't gonna feel quite right. I thought they might feel like a shallow reflection of their original counterpart, almost like a parody of themselves. There are some moments where they teeter the line of becoming a parody, with moments like,
"The power of the sun in the palm of my hand."
You know, I'm something of a scientist myself.
which kind of bugs me, because it's the writers going, we're in on the joke, we know the memes. Because, when Norman said,
I'm something of a scientist myself.
No one knew that was going to be this line that gets memed to hell. So it kind of takes me out of it when they have the character say it at something they would just kind of repeatedly say. But I mean, whatever. It's for fun. It's fine. The point still stands. I love that the villains are authentic and were literally pulled from their movies. You can see the exact moment that they were pulled from.
Spider-Man was trying to stop my fusion reactor. So I stopped him. I had him by the throat. And then
Sandman's is a little ambiguous. Judging by how he introduces himself, I imagine he could have been pulled some odd years after the ending of Spider-Man 3. I love how clunky the dialogue is for Sandman in his introduction. He's like, "Hey Peter, remember me? It's Flint Marko from the hit 2007 movie Spider-Man 3. Flint Marko being in this literal Sandman form all the time is sadly a stain of the pandemic era of filmmaking. Because it's just so obvious that that's the reason his performance was restricted to just VO and reuse footage from Spider-Man 3. It's just an unfortunate result of the circumstances at the time. Also, the Lizard's here. To keep talking about how fun it is to see the dynamics play out by having all these villains here together all at once, I mean, just seeing Otto acknowledge Norman Osborn is bizarre. You have these two great scientists that existed in the same world, and it's only now, after 20 years, that we see them just simply say each other's names. It's just something that I didn't even quantify as being possible. And it's not an SNL sketch or some silly Burger King commercial or something like that. It's real. It feels like going back to your childhood bedroom, pushing your old wardrobe to the side, and discovering a door you never knew was even there. The same can be said about seeing Norman share his passion for engineering alongside Peter, and that brief moment between Otto and Aunt May, where she offers him a glass of water. When I think of these guys in their original movies, my mind jumps to the scenes where they fully become the villain. The one-liners, the crazy action sequences. So it's really interesting to get to see them again in slower, quieter moments. It might sound like I'm making a big deal out of scenes that are minuscule in the grand scheme of things, but it just feels like such a treat to get these characters that are such a pivotal part of my childhood once again. And obviously I'm focusing on Otto and Norman because they are the villains from my childhood. And also because Electro is kind of the outlier of the group. His characterization here doesn't fully support the idea of being authentic to who he was in TASM 2. In that movie, he was this over-the-top nerdy caricature, sort of a Jim Carrey type from Batman Forever. And even when he fully became Electro, he was devoid of any memorable personality. Here it feels like Jamie Foxx is just kind of playing himself. He's this cool, suave dude who you can kind of hang out with. I mean, yeah, he's an asshole because he doesn't have the best intentions in mind, but I don't know, he's just a dude. And honestly, it's for the better. I like this depiction of him a lot more, and I wish this No Way Home version was the one TASM 2 had to begin with. In behind the scenes interviews, you can tell that even Jamie Foxx thought that the old Electro didn't work and that they needed to update him for this movie. You can explain this in-universe to keep the idea of the villains being authentic intact by saying that the highly advanced energy he absorbed from the MCU rejuvenated him, made him cooler, confident, and handsome. Yeah, we'll go with that. Also, the lizard is here. Peter almost had his not my problem moment here. But Aunt May saves him from making that choice. She reminds him of the responsibility they bear. They're there to help people, which leads Peter to retaliate against Doctor Strange, who is just about to send these people to their certain death. Doctor Strange, someone Peter probably looked up to as an example of what it means to be a larger-than-life superhero, much like Iron Man and all the other Avengers, was wrong here. Peter was the bigger man, and to me this felt like the first major step of him finally becoming the person I think Spider-Man to be. What the fuck was that spin? What's awesome about No Way Home, among many other things, is that the core theme of saving and rehabilitating these villains is a compelling story and a quintessential Spider-Man thing that leads to a pivotal moment for the character that was long overdue. Aunt May being this universe's Uncle Ben is the perfect alternative. Especially after Endgame, when I was convinced that, okay, so Tony Stark is Uncle Ben here? I really couldn't get behind that, and I'm glad it wasn't the case. I just wish we'd gotten more time with Aunt May throughout the trilogy. She has some great moments in Homecoming that are so heartfelt and feel like a real mother-son relationship. Then Far From Home drops the ball, which stinks because that ended up being precious time that was wasted. But I still think they knocked the ball out of the park in No Way Home. The slow twist of the knife as we realize what happened to Aunt May after she tries to play it off as a minor stumble. What makes this moment even more gut-wrenching is that Peter did stop the robber, metaphorically. He made the villains of the other world his problem. He did the right thing, and it still led to Aunt May succumbing to a fate much like Uncle Ben's. Even though the great responsibility moment was alluded to in Civil War, the character needed this. Tom's Spider-Man was the third iteration of the character in movies, and many expressed that there was no need for another origin story where Uncle Ben gets gunned down once again. But this version of Spider-Man didn't carry the tragedy that's a foundation of the character. While it may have been alluded to, it certainly wasn't felt. And this was Peter finally earning his stripes. The web lines on his costume. The MCU gets torn apart often. It might just be my algorithm, but comic book movies tend to be the topic of conversations every day of the week on every social media platform. And while a lot of those criticisms are valid, like the way some of these movies are lit, the overuse of CGI, these movies feeling very samey in terms of tone, the list goes on. But what happened here, it's pure magic. I grew up during a time where something like this would be a canceled movie you'd hear about in a YouTube video. Something so unbelievably cool that there's no way it would ever be real. But this happened, man. Yes, Andrew Garfield's entrance is awkward when you watch it at home and realize that they purposely left a pause to allow for the audience to cheer and applaud in the theater. And yeah, this VFX looks awful. Admittedly, I was underwhelmed that Andrew and Toby literally just walked into the movie without some sort of grand heroic entrance in full costume where they saved Tom Holland from someone at the last possible second. But I've come to appreciate the slow pace of this moment. It's easy to get lost in crazy action sequences, and then something incredibly hype happens, and you're completely overwhelmed, still trying to process what the fuck just happened. And you're like, wait, what was that? Oh my god, there's too much? Oh, he just did the thing? Oh, ah! I'm glad that we got to breathe as this historic event unfolded before us. You can feel the excitement of being back in the red and blues emanating from Andrew. Toby stepping in as the wise and experienced Spider-Man whose first instinct is to help Tom Holland's Peter is just so warm and perfect for the character. Plus, Andrew and Toby did swoop in to save Tom Holland's Peter Parker in a much more meaningful and heartfelt way. I watch the rooftop scene of Spider-Man No Way Home at least once a week. It's the moment of this 3-hour-long movie. Peter is at his lowest point. The Goblin has taken away the only family he had left, and he mocked what she stood for. This is Peter feeling like stepping in to rehabilitate these villains was a mistake, and reverting back to, it's not my problem. Toby and Andrew step in and shed some light in the seemingly infinite darkness Tom's Peter is drowning in. The two coming in already teary-eyed makes me fucking mush, man. Not to discredit the things Peter had done in Homecoming and Far From Home, because he did stop threats and was a hero in his own right in those movies. But this feels like the true origin of this Spider-Man. Is that crazy to say? Everything prior felt like crazy adventures he got strung along in, and it wasn't until this movie that he embodied the iconic hero. It's incredible that the other Spider-Men are an important part of this generation's Spider-Man. The 20-year film legacy of Spider-Man at this point is a fixture of Tom Holland's Spider-Man. That's a really special way of utilizing the concept of the multiverse in the MCU. And again, I said it 1,000 times already, but something I never thought possible. It's amazing when you think about how the circumstances of our real world entertainment culture led to this scene becoming a reality. You know, canceled sequels, failed franchises, reboots, nostalgia, adapting crazy comic book arcs. Those are the ingredients that made this scene a reality. Let's say that the Raimi movies went up to Spider-Man 6, by like 2015 or something like that. And then that franchise ends. Then we get the Andrew Garfield TASM movies, and let's say he gets a trilogy, that easily leads to 2020, 2021. We needed those prior franchises to get cut off to make this scene a reality. What follows is just having fun with the three Peters existing in the same universe. Fan fiction you've read online, memes, the conversations you'd imagine these guys would naturally have happen here. I can watch a 3-hour movie of them sitting at a table and talking about the villains they fought, the differences in their powers, their costumes, their friends and family. But what I appreciate most is that they took the opportunity to explore some loose threads. We got confirmation that Toby's Peter and his MJ are doing okay. Andrew is still very much a broken man. Despite going through some dark times that altered his character, he pushed through. There are shots where we see him with a bit of a somber aura, letting us know that he still has some healing to do. It's melancholic, but in a beautiful way. Even though we got this incredibly cathartic moment where Andrew gets some redemption for the most tragic moment in his life, it still swung open this door of emotions that made me yearn for more stories about this Peter Parker. There's really something special about Andrew's Peter. You can tell that he injects a lot of himself into the character, and it gives his depiction such a real and raw feel. The TASM movies aren't perfect, but Andrew's Peter is truly something amazing. After the three Peters successfully cure the villains and are sent back home, Tom Holland's Peter approaches Doctor Strange and asks him to once again cast a spell that this time will make everyone forget who Peter Parker is, to prevent the multiverse from crashing in on them. The One More Day story arc from the comics is infamous for kind of just waving a magic hand and reverting a bunch of shit back to how it was, and making changes to Peter Parker's life that essentially made years of Spider-Man stories obsolete. The ramifications of this story are still affecting Spider-Man comic books today, and dude, I don't even want to get into it. I don't read modern Spider-Man comics, I play the video games. No Way Home is kind of adapting that story arc here, but doing it in a way that doesn't feel like such a cop-out. Peter still carries the weight of Aunt May's death and everything it means and will do for his character. He sacrifices his relationship with MJ, Ned, and all of his friends and allies he's made throughout his battles. Peter is left completely alone and alienated from the rest of the world, since the knowledge of his existence is literally wiped from everyone's mind. Peter Parker being down on his luck is a quintessential element of the character. This is that dialed up to 11. This resolution continues to drive this version of the character down that path of becoming the recognizable Spider-Man we all know and love, and quite frankly, that I've been yearning for. The nanotech woven suit has been traded in for an old-fashioned spandex costume. His secret identity is intact. He's broke and lives in a small rundown apartment. And the future of Spider-Man in the MCU is more exciting than ever because of this. It's just crazy to me that we've reached a point with comic book movies that even mainstream audiences can wrap their heads around the concept of the multiverse. Because sure, comic book nerds, they know about the multiverse, old news, whatever. DC and Marvel, they've been doing that kind of stuff forever. But now, the MCU started the multiverse saga and it's now splintering off to other, forms of media. You got Across the Spider-Verse, an animated movie that might potentially be crossing over with the MCU, because Miguel O'Hara referenced the events of No Way Home in one of the recent trailers. Like, are we gonna get Tom Holland again in Across the Spider-Verse? Maybe Toby and Andrew again? I don't know. I mean, at the time of this recording, I haven't seen the movies, so we'll see. But it's just crazy that they really are doing the thing of the multiverse. We're even seeing a video game Spider-Man in Across the Spider-Verse with Insomniac's white logo Spidey. Like, we see him. I mean, it might not actually be him, but it's just crazy that they really are just doing the multiverse thing and just, covering as much as they can. I'm rambling now. The Fourth Snake, thank you so much for asking me to be a part of this collaboration. I had a lot of fun talking about No Way Home. I don't normally talk about movies in my channel, so this was a great opportunity to do that. So this video might be a little rough around the edges because I'm not as comfortable talking about movies as I am about video games. Which, by the way, the reaction to my Shattered Dimensions video has been overwhelmingly positive. It's hands down like my most successful video in terms of reaching 20,000 views just 3 days after I put it up. Like, that's never happened before in my channel. So thank you so much to everyone that's watched and left nice comments. If you'd like me to cover Spider-Man Edge of Time, the sequel to that game, make sure to subscribe to be notified of when that goes live. And also make sure to check out Xavier's and Josh's video as part of this collaboration. They got some good stuff cooked up. But as always, thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.